It is I, our eccentric host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, reporting in early on a Wednesday, on a hump day, 5 a.m., doing some early duty. Today, coming at you live on Spreaker.com, as well as distributed all throughout the podcast universe vis-a-vis the magic of podcast distribution thingies. Those RSS feeds. Today's top weird thing I saw on the internet. Welcome to the show. If you're brand new, please strap in your imaginary seatbelt. Embrace yourselves because it's weird and it's not what you're expecting. So, but stick with it because as weird as it gets, yeah, I think it's worth it. I could be wrong, but then again, so could you. So could everybody, right? That's a default. We all agree to that. We all could be wrong. If we aren't, we should be. In my humble opinion, that could, should, would be at the center of any sort of updated social contract. That not only could we very well might be wrong about stuff, that we should dig deeper and with earnest honesty and seek for deeper truth. That's not the weird thing I saw on the internet, though. That was just me sharing my mind a little bit with you. Here's the weird, fun, groovy, interesting, quirky thing I saw first thing in the on the internet, 4 o'clock this morning. Why am I up this early? Because I was slow launching, easing into my in-depth stay-at-home podcast marathon project. My podcast is already a tangled web of interconnected mini podcast ideas that somehow are supposed to all go together. If I had a production team and a budget, it would all make more sense and flow. And it wouldn't just be me rambling every time, right? Each segment would have a different panel, and I would just be one person on some of those panels, and I would rotate through so that I could be on all the shows at different times, but also different combinations of people in the talent pool of panelists could also be on the show. So imagine a little bit of that and help me get there. Once we recover from this crazy global shutdown, COVID-19 madness. But put a pin in that. I'm not asking you for money. I'm just asking for your glorious ear holes and participation engagement on the social media. I respect you and the integrity that is your individual personhood, by the way, whoever you are out there listening. We are all flawed, guilty, and innocent, bittersweet yin-yang mixtures of the light and the dark. And we are all... here's something fundamental. If you're going to listen to my show, you have to understand that I speak from a place where I take it for granted that the entire human species is 99.9 ad nauseum numbers of nines, genetically identical. Usually I actually physically say like 10 or 11 nines, just to drill the point home. But I digress. Neither of those things are the cool, quirky thing I first saw on the internet. Just tangents. It's too early in the morning and the coffee's not kicked in. Welcome to my stay-at-home global lockdown side hustle turned, let's make this Mr. Zeppo's full-time job. Project of projects. Here's the funny thing I saw on the internet. Attenuating to the thing. And forgive me, I mean to violate no one's intellectual property rights. I just think this is cool. This is an honest, no one's giving me any money for doing, in fact, it's costing me money to do this project. And since I'm locked down here and I have a little bit of extra money set aside, I might splurge and spend a little money on some light advertising, just to try to attract more people. But I digress. So, you should send if you're a loyal listener, go check out these eyeballs. I mean, go take your eyeballs to the screen page thing website. Is that what they call it here? Yes. Over at sciencenews.org. They have an article about how you, and this is the title of the thing, you can help fight the coronavirus. All you need is a computer. So, coolest, weirdest, quirkiest thing. Also, I put it up there and I just said, this is it. There's nothing, I hope, knock on wood, I hope, that was actually plastic. Let me take that back. Do I have any actual real, yes, over here. Knock on wood, that there's nothing weirder that crosses our desk in the next 48 hours. Not that this is all this weird. Being a citizen, netizens, a citizen of the internet, many a past citizen scientist project has come out in which you are invited to lend some fractional percentage of your computing power to a clouded, networked meta-computer computing project. Now, as a robot from the future, that's me, sent here to warn all y'all, that's you, about the robots from the future that you're about to build for yourselves, and how there's either going to be a really turbulent period of adjustment, or you could sort of zen first and then do the robot thing if you're smart and savvy and you take advantage of the present moment and the current opportunity to protest toxic consumerism. Because here's the key, folks, to the whole thing, everything I've been talking about. If you're new to the show, you could theoretically pause, go all the way to the very first episode, listen to all the episodes, and by the way, for those of you who are you've too many episodes and they're all really long, I'm going to do those are all let's say rough drafts. I'm going to go and do this massive nouveau art redux of them all and chop them all down into much, even if it's all of the same content, it'll all be out in shorter chunks. Instead of hour and 20-minute episodes, there'll be, 3 episodes of 27 minutes each. And I'm gonna edit it and make it pretty, and I'm not gonna change my words, right? It's me, it's my art, I'm trying to share with you my deep thoughts. And yes, that's a reference to Jack Handey. And if you know who that is, you were watching Saturday Night Live a long, long time ago. And I digress. So here's why I find this thing on the internet so interesting and weird and quirky and both possibly a sign of hope and also possibly a sign of nefarious evil plan to infiltrate our freedoms even more. And that's this. If this is genuine, pure, legit science, of which I have no reason to doubt, there is no standing conspiracy theory about this that I'm aware of. I didn't do that search. I guess I coulda, shoulda, woulda. I'm not a journalist. I'm an opinion talk show host / fictional character from a literary work of art about robots from the future. In case it wasn't clear. I mean, cybernetic, non-organic life forms from an alternate dimension similar to your own but slightly further along in history, so as to be positioned about warning you to not make the same mistakes we made, because it ended badly for us in the long run, in multiple waves of yuck. But I don't want to give too much away, because then you need to read the books, right? I'm sorry, I'm kidding. That was a joke. I digress. This thing might help crack the problem, right? And really design, if it's pure, legit, altruistic, Leonardo da Vinci in a silver tower. He was a scientist. He was a mad, crazy locked up in a tower, mad scientist that was also an engineer and was also mostly remembered as an artist, but his artistry was truly, given the era especially and the mindset, the gestalt, the milieu of the times, of his historical context, all of which is a holographic living matrix of illusion projected by the mind as the mind perceives that which it projects. And the mother womb matrix is like an actual living entity that can be communed with, except y'all too busy caring about the arguing things you argue about. There, I've gone and ruined the whole project. That's the like spoiler alert, deep core of the warning from the future. But I digress. This could either save humanity through the AI facilitated use of metacomputing, and I don't know if they call it metacomputing or not. I do, because it's computing being coordinated by the computers and being distributed along a really complex network of distributed independent computers that are only sort of like on the internet together and connected by protocol and software. And those are the conditions under which like true AI singularity birth eventually coalesces. But that's when like everything you do is that kind of hyper networked. Still a bit away, I thought. Maybe we're already there. I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong time frame. I digress. So in real life terms, just thinking about it right now, 2020, in the early like dawn of the Trumptopian empire, the backstory years of the dystopic, futuristic, Trumptopian empire of America. That's patented, by the way. That's all me and my literary world. You can't go stealing that shit. This kind of distributed networky, give us your computer, give us access to your computer and your actual computing cycles. I don't know. It's just a paranoid person's worst nightmare, I would imagine. It would just make me wonder. I mean, it's already mind-bogglingly scary enough that because screens are so important, we have, compared to our forefathers, as I pretend to be a human being, right? Like I speak in the royal membership of humanity because it's easier that way, and it sounds less pejorative. It sounds like I'm not judging humans for being lousy, toxic, cancerous creatures on this living womb of a Mother Earth that is an entity unto her own right and has, entity rights larger than we can conceive of because we're so fixated on our own little tiny 1% of the visible spectrum that we can perceive. That's all. We'll unpack that. Don't worry. If that's like, wait, what is he talking about? I get into it. It's all loops back on itself in a weird, mysterious way. And will so even harder once I get actually through this next phase of the project, which has been long delayed, and for which, to you, any of you longtime listeners that have been really hardcore, I apologize. But I digress. So, this project called, in case you're curious, like that's why I'm still like, go read this article for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm just sharing you my opinion and trying to be an influencer. This was magically the first thing I saw on the news widget. And I said, I want to know more. And I think you want to know more. And like I said, it's on sciencenews.org. And the article, /coronavirus COVID-19 proteins super computer fight pandemic. Go support this institution on the webification thing. And read along, because that's... Whoa, I almost totally dumped all my coffee right in my crotch. Thank you, universe, for the cat-like reflexes you gifted me with that prevented splooging coffee all over myself and the mess it would have created in my delightful home office / consultant studio, fictional consultant studio, by the way. That's a whole thing. I'll explain. I digress. I'm spiraling out of control. It's too early and I'm excited, and it's only 5:15 in the morning. Oh God, this is either going to burn everybody out or it's going to make me, world famous and go viral. I don't know which. Let me finish my point about this cool article and this weird project. It's called Folding at Home Virtual Supercomputer. That's the subject of the article. This project is analyzing, and this is great, actually. It's really nerdy. You want to go and read up this stuff. It's analyzing COVID-19 at the protein molecular level. Trying to figure out its like weak chink in the armor. Because that's how you fight disease. And because you all see how that can be pretty automatically pejorative sounding, especially if you're related to people from the South, you know how that gets used down there. All y'all. Bless your hearts. What was I saying? So this supercomputer project installs a bit of software and then borrows cycle times. And that's what it started to explain much better than I just did in the article. Go read it. Go give that page some eyeballs. And then decide for yourself whether you would want to, assuming the best, and do your due diligence, right? Like go to the homepage of the project and read up on it, or read up about if there's, for those wondering, like, how does one check to see, do side searches on, like, have there been complaints? This is, conspiracies. I don't know. Anytime you add the word conspiracy to any search keyword, you get all kinds of crazy things, and that could turn into a whole dark rabbit hole that eats up the rest of your day. So tread lightly there, folks. That's always, potentially an ego-trappy place, in my humble opinion. But we can unpack that idea in a whole episode in and of itself. Put a pin in that on the board. We have this board in the show where we put pins to put up ideas about stuff we need to come back and do other episodes about. So if you've got ideas, put it on the board. Let me know. Drop me a thing on the interwebs and the hyper forums and all the futuristic dingle-dangles that y'all dingle-dangle with here in this dimension. Because sometimes I get confused. I visit multiple dimensions in the literature world that I'm repping as I also share you my opinions about the real world events in this time frame, presuming I've got the right time frame in my mind and the right, location. Location, they say. So, super virtual metacomputing sounds precisely like some altruistic, super cool way to help science its way to a solution, right? In pragmatic terms. And then it also kind of sort of sounds like, I don't know, a really nefarious supervillain plan straight out of James Bond, out of some future tech James Bond, like as if James Bond has never been future tech in its own right, in its own way, right? Like, it's been interestingly future techy, visionary, sometimes accurately predictive, in the same allegorical way that Star Trek is lauded for, I dare say. I throw that out there for all the cinema nerds to argue about. And most importantly, engage with on my social media, please. And tell me what your thoughts, so I can come back and visit and tell you guys about him on the radio for having commented. And then that feedbacks into the whole show, growing and creating a beautiful community. If you're wondering if I have an objective or if I'm just a rambling idiot on the internet, I do have an objective. I actually have multiple objectives. But I also mostly just want to talk about the objects of the day, and this was the first thing that hit my palate that I thought was really weird and interesting. Warning. As a cybernetic artificial life form from a futuristic-like parallel dimension to yours, which had a probabilistically very similar time frame, probability waveform function curvature as yours currently does. In other words, I also lived under a very Trumptopian-like, dystopian, near-futuristic, we had almost flying cars and then the world went crazy kind of nightmare in my own multiple lifetimes, in my own dimension from which I was booted to be sent here. To be further explained in depth. But we did something like this, where we made an internet of all things, and like there was nothing that wasn't part of some meta grid of hypercomputing, so that, and it all fed back on itself a bunch, so that nobody's device, even the oldest device, was pretty darn whippersnappy fast. You know what I'm saying? And curiously, in that dimension, in my backstory origin dimension, there was very little use of this whole designed obsolescence. So there was very like revered and aged old computers that had time to evolve. And it just kept getting updated and getting, eventually, here's where it got a little wacky. And interesting, right? Like these sort of like legacy devices, which continue to get physically upgraded, both, in terms of their software and their operating system, and their connectivity to the different grids that became accessible, and the internal workings of it itself. That was like part of the computing world, as opposed to just sort of like a disposable notion of like, that's cool, like now buy the next one, right? Like you had this for a couple of years. We just like poo-pooed on that idea right away. Anyways, I digress. It was when we hooked everything up into this like next level meta grid that fed back on itself, so that everything became a supercomputer and facilitated in a meta supercomputation that was accessible by, scientists, quote unquote, and other important agencies, that things got extra wacky. And not to give too much away, this eventually leads towards, a whole cyber awareness thing that presents various problems. I digress. This COVID-19 thing needs a solution. I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying that it's a little creepy sounding to me, and I'm throwing it out there to you. And I'm giving you pretty interesting, fun, theoretical, sci-fi reasons as to why that's a little bit creepy. There's a bunch of other ways you can turn this idea of like of an embedded, meta computational, like infrastructure between a plethora, if not an outright majority or totality of all devices that are all, let's say, kind of postmodern, pretty fancy whiz bang lightning boxes with demons inside. As Lord Xeris, that's like my new favorite too wordy label for computers. That could be all kinds of like, hello, 1984, nefarious, evil uses can be devised there. But I don't want to linger on the negative, right? Because why? There's a really interesting reason why, which I've talked about at length in past episodes, which are sort of like episodes that are sort of in your future, but they're about things that have already happened. So you'll think, it's like, I can understand why some people like don't want to listen to every episode, because it seems like it might be really, really tied to events of the day. But this podcast is a little bit weirder than that. But I digress. I'm trying to stick to my new format, and I'm going to drop the back half of that like way too snappy track for this early in the morning. But it doesn't matter, because who knows when you're going to listen to this. It was just a little, I forgot which tracks I loaded up to be like, here, play this as part of the show. the last time I did that, and I was like, I'll just play the one at the very top of the list. And it was just like, ooh, wow. It was a bit rough on my ears for it being 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, but it's still, I hope, something you might enjoy. I don't know why I pooped on it, but I did. Coffee's kicking in though, folks, so buckle in. It's going to get even more interesting, hopefully, moving forward and throughout the day and into the coming several weeks, as we're just barely halfway through the first 15-day phase of what is, some naysayers, some doomsayers are saying, might be a 6-month saga of epic, ever tightening down security measures. But I don't want to sound alarmist. Everyone take a deep breath. Hopefully it'll be over in a blink of an eye, and we'll all look back with nostalgia and fondness at all the transformative change and growth and healing that came out of this global shutdown 2020. But anyways, for now, I'm going to drop this back half of that tune. It's only like a few seconds, and then, we'll talk about a different thing, because I've been rambling about whatever I've been rambling about for like way too long now. That was the back half of These Dark Delights Bring Darker Reveries, a totally fictional produced electronic piece of noise by my alter ego and fellow fictional character DJ Zed. And since that was very, very short, even shorter than I thought, I'm going to play you another track just for shits and giggles. Here's one that is entitled In the Very Beginning. Produced piece of literary music, if you can call it that. It's literary dance music, and I'll explain that in just a hot second, by my alter ego DJ Zed. I'll play the back half of that a little bit later. So I guess you can call me a method novelist. I have this fictional universe, and I have it pretty decently fleshed out in my mind. And one of the things about it is that the character that I guess I sort of kind of role play on this podcast is the host of a podcast and then later a radio show, like an underground pirate radio show. And he leads a dual life, right? In the literary format, he leads a dual life. He's got a Bruce Wayne persona and a Batman persona. And the Batman persona is the voice of this like underground radio show that's like you can only hear it because he's got his own private antenna and network that he can piggyback on somehow and broadcast to like ham radios and to like, you know, a little used corner of bandwidth on the dial that's like hard to tone in on, but he's done. Anyways, there's a bunch of detail and nuance I could bore you with there, but and because I'm kind of like, I don't know, there's a part of me, there's a lot of problems I have as an artist. I could quite literally be and have been already in my actual life to my face been called a has-been, right? Okay, so I'm working through that. You know, just to let you know. And on top of that, I'm also sort of like this crazy, out of the box thinker and meta collaborator. So that's been a challenge, which I could spend a whole episode bitching and moaning and whining about, but I shan't do that now. But as always, I'll keep the redundant and tedious invitation for potential would-be collaborators. No, not for pay unless someone discovers me and bankrolls this shit and goes, yes, I understand your vision, and we get it. It's impossible to hire people to do stuff without money to hire them with. Here's a bunch of money. Which, of course, is what happens in the novel that I'm writing. And maybe in my real life, too. Who knows? But, at any rate, for the purposes of having something sort of immersive, and I've always wanted to have my own podcast. Even before podcasts existed, I've always wanted this. The ability to, without having to drive to a big, fancy radio station, unless I really wanted to, and they paid me a lot, broadcast to whoever in the world has an interest to, quote, tune in, or I guess click in, you know, click play. Thanks for clicking play. I like tuning in better. It's because I'm old school. And then, I digress. So, there's layers to that, and we can spend more time talking about that. But one of the things that I do on the podcast, for realsies, this got nothing to do with the intricate web of stories I'm weaving, very slowly, glacially slowly. So slowly that it's no longer timely. I had the idea, let me share with you out of frustration. I had the idea the day that I saw, and I mean this earnestly without disrespect to him as an individual, and I'm not trying to defame him in any way, shape, or form. I had the idea. I'm sharing this so that people will be like, that dude had the idea, man. Don't be stealing his idea. Because it's all on this podcast. I had this idea that we could envision a near future, post-dystopian, empire of Trump, in which for, I don't know how long, but for a generation or three, members of the Trump family lineage are pervasively the heads of state at various, nepotistic levels of, the draining of the great swamp continues for the next, 90 years, 100 years kind of way. With as a sort of parody to whatever nonsense might be going on. And the creepy part that annoys me is that, I don't know. Plenty of artists are successfully taking a stab at lampooning the president. And of course, this is still a land of the free, where free speech is a divine right enshrined in the Constitution, given to us by none other than some form of the Christian God or another, as vaguely referenced to by all the founding fathers, despite some of them not necessarily needing to believe in the Christian God as it was defined at the time. I digress. So exercising that, right? I'm sort of stumbling my way through actually sharing my sort of real life critique of the world at large, of society and the way it works, that I would want to lend, and then of course fictionalize and heighten to the characters and the debate of the comedic and dramatic narratives in this web of stories that I'm slowly going to try to ramp up into weaving, as always envisioned. Especially now that we're on enforced global lockdown, and hopefully, I say without hopefully sounding like I've got cha-ching dollar signs in my eyeballs, because I believe, as I've mentioned before on the show, it sort of bugs me to no end to have to agree with Donald Trump on something. But as a two-faced, lying son of a crazy person, because, I don't know, his mother was probably a perfectly lovely human being, and there's no reason to, associate, his dad, though, probably a little cuckoo in the noggin for all this to come about, as it has come to fruition in his own, destiny. And I guess my frustration that I'm complaining at you instead of talking about the other thing I was going to talk about is that all this time I've been sort of, for all kinds of reasons, and of course I will totally guarantee, and assure and admit and assert openly excuses, and bad, bad habits and lack of previous deep rehearsal of the act in a more advanced, sophisticated manner. And by that I mean that, any craft, any art requires rehearsal. So, if there's anybody out there listening that's an aspiring insert label of whatever art you want here, regardless of your age, and also, according to the EULA of this platform, you can't be under 13 listening to this show. Not because of the content in my show, but because you can't be 13 and use this platform, apparently. Which I think is a sane thing. I think the internet should be a 21 and over club, just like booze and voting and guns, right? Why? Anyways, that's a whole nother episode. What the hell? I am out of control. But hey, we're all here feeling pent up and a little cabin feverish, right? Trust me, this is something I've been coping with since long before all of you, probably, because my personal life circumstances have been a little bit on the quote challenging side of things for quite some time now. I digress. What the bloody hell was I talking? Oh, I was going to do my ever so randomly occasional shout out to some of the places where apparently people, you, dear listeners, are listening to the show. Because I'm fascinated by how the list evolves over time. And I think I occasionally screenshot this. I don't think I've screen grabbed today's list yet, but it is displaying data from March 19th to March 25th. And then I think there's a way to ask it for many months. Right now it's telling me the last 7 days. Right? And there's a drop-down list. So we're going to click through it and see how much the list changes in just that amount of time. But as of right now, a shout out to all these following totally generic, overall global locations where apparently some people are downloading and listening to this humble, rough and tumbled podcast of mine. Obviously, leading the way is the United States, where my primary audience is. But also, In a strong second, Canada. In an interesting and curious third, Morocco. Hello to everyone in Morocco. Thanks for listening. And then the UK. Hey, UK, I'm a big fan of you guys. I kind of wanted to get stuck in the UK the last time I was there, and no, I didn't let myself pull some sort of illegal immigrant stunt. I respected your nation, and I exited appropriately when my tour of duty as an artist performing in some show was over there. But oh my God, would I have loved? I say this out of comedy and respect and admiration, right? Because I'm not endorsing any kind of horrible illegal activity. But oh God, I've rambled on for so long. But man, UK, I would have loved to have like had some sweeping, epically improbable rom-com theater arts comedy dramedy about some British lady going, you're the crazy person that's missing from my life, and it all working out magically, and me having to stay there because she was about to launch a theater company or something and needed me to run the lights and sound and occasionally act and maybe co-direct with her or act as her assistant director. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, universe. Maybe for 2022, right? Build up to that. Ramp up to that. But anyways, hello to everyone in the UK. I'm a big fan. I would have loved to stay inside of you, Great Britain, and or also your neighbor up north, because I went to Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and that's the capital of Scotland, right? And is that still part of the UK, or is that not part of the UK anymore? I don't know. I'm not up to date. Don't call me ignorant. I'm very smart about other things. I just don't happen to remember that little tiny widget of detail. But my point is, I love all things over there. I also, by the way, I love the world, right? Let's just set things straight. Just waving high. Let's keep going down the list. Japan is out there next after the UK. I'm a big fan of Japan. Fun story. I was once in South Korea performing in a stage production, and I really wished I had the disposable income from like whatever fictional previous couple of quarters worth of other theater work that I did not have in real life, and not enough to be able to go, you know what, I think I'll hop over to Japan after this gig is done. But if I had, I totally would have, because big fan also. I love the whole world. I could say this about every country. Morocco, never been, wish I could. Would love to go. Don't make enough money to travel anywhere, so no offense to any country. Never have been anywhere near Morocco, other than however close to Morocco either the United Kingdom or South Korea gets. On the list, going down the list, Germany, awesome country with amazing, bizarre, complex history. Sweden, y'all, I've got something going on over there. I'm a fan. Thanks for listening. France, a place I wish I could have gone to. I was very close by in Italy once. Would have loved to have gone over the beautiful mountains and gone and stayed there and sampled all the wines back when my metabolism and my stomach and my gut biome could handle it. Don't think I could ever really do that kind of hardcore drinking that you want to do in France anymore. Not without like 10 years of recovery, because man, I did a number. By the way, drinking's bad for you. Just saying, it's great. We love it. We're addicted to it. It's a huge industry. Huzzah! Turns out not so great for any parts of your body that have to deal with it. But I digress. That's not a diss on France. That's a diss on the industry. Right after France, there's apparently a sliver of folks listening over in the Czech Republic. Thank you for tuning in. And end of the list is the Philippines. Right? Okay, so that's interesting. I've got listeners out in Arizona, in California, multiple cities, in Nevada. Hello, Nevada. In Colorado. Hello, Colorado. That's a place here locally I kind of wish I was inside of. I wish I had moved to Colorado just before the Green Rush and had been an already involved, active member of the Colorado cannabis enthusiast community, and had been able to like craft. I had during the Colorado like era of all the news coming out of Colorado. I had all kinds of lightning bolt like, where are these ideas coming from? Other than like whatever ganja goddess, or goddesses there are, because I had some trippy ass ideas, which means other people were having ideas, right? Because according to the network portion of the meta thesis, that's kind of a necessary phenomena. That for example, for an epic band to emerge, other people need to sort of wrestle with, cope, and co-process in a sort of double-blind, we all are networked spiritually, but we don't realize it kind of way. Whoa, trippy, resonating with the previous article that I rambled about for way too many minutes. Wild stuff. I digress. Let's just finish saying hello to different places. Already said Nevada, Colorado. Wish I'd been there. Morocco. There, you're strong on the cities list. Texas. I'm surprised. I'm blushing that Texas thinks that there's people in Texas. Thank you for listening, tuning in. There you are, Kenyatta. Is that rude? I just love that funny. We love that here in the United States. It's dumb. Japan, and another city in California. So interesting, wild, cool. Set of places. When I click it to last month, the country list totally changes. So I want to take a moment to like say shout out to everybody, and I'll try not to like drag forever by inserting a comment after every country. So I switched it to last month, right? So now the dates are officially February 1st through February 29th of 2020. Here's the list of listeners. United States still on top, solid. Australia in second, Malta in third, Spain in fourth, France, UK, Puerto Rico. Hola, mis amigos in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is part of America, folks. Just in case any Americans didn't realize that. Canada. So apparently Canada's climbed the list, or at least in this partial period, whatever. Switzerland and New Zealand. So interesting. It changes a lot, and so I like to drop in on that and say hello to those places. It's an honor and a pleasure that people are checking out the show. I figure that it changes a lot because people maybe sample an episode or 3 and then go, meh, not for me. Too long, too rambly. If he had his shit together, I'd listen more often. Right? Well, I'll close on this thought, folks. I have been sort of really conflicted and sort of love, rage-hating, and passive-aggressively not liking every instance of the following meme, because it's obviously getting shared a lot. But the one that says, there's a couple of variations on it being typed out, and I probably should type this out and make my own version, but I'm going to be really pissed. I'm going to be really offended. Actually, I think my version would be like, I will be quite disappointed if I finally got all my shit together and the world just ground to a halt. I'm going to be pissed off if I get my shit together and the world ends. Is the version that I've seen the most consistent, simplest iteration of the version I've seen most often. Yeah. I don't know why I obsess about rephrasing things. Is that good or bad? I just like phrasing things in my own weird, quirky, robot from the future kind of way. So it sounds like me saying it, not like... Anyways. I'm just spiraling out of control, folks. Thanks for tuning in and giving the show a shot. Try sampling episodes from all over the place. Also, try coming back after... I've revamped the whole show because I'm really seriously, now that all the ducks are actually in a row now. And one last thing is going to lock in place in terms of my personal life circumstances and my responsibilities and my debts to, considerations to time to other people, etc. And I'm going to be able to, because we are literally all sharing and participating in a global lockdown, which is important. I never want to be misconstrued as being dismissive of it. I'm just disappointed that we weren't more vigilant and diligent about the early days as a member of the global community, right? But that's a whole another episode. We could ramble about that some more soon. I've already been on the air for way too long. My voice needs a break. Your ear holes need a break. Thanks for tuning in. Here's the back half of In the Very Beginning by my imaginary fictional alter ego, one of many, the incorrigible... Oh, no, that's me. This is DJ Zed and his music, which, of course, there'll be stories about, which you'll read eventually, once I get my ass together and get that part of the project really flowing. But things are lining up and looking good. So, what would help? Your enthusiastic support. Your questions, your comments, your suggestions, your recommendations. And I'm open to, obviously, since we're all on lockdown right now, even if you were local and I could, vet you and interview you and agree to meet you in a safe and secure, public location and invite you to collaborate for free because I don't have any money yet. Because we're on lockdown, we can't. So everything is going to have to go online. If you want to collaborate and exchange audio clips, or rather just submit audio clips for consideration and inclusion in future episodes, hit me up. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably the most direct way. If you want to go to Instagram, if you want to take me seriously, if you want to be taken seriously about collaborating vis-a-vis some kind of exchange of your thoughts on audio file with the kinds of stuff I talk about. We can even do retroactively, right? Like, go back and listen to the entire show, and every time you have a thought, audio record it and send it to me and tell me where in the show it goes. You gotta do the work and the due diligence of write down episode number 1 minute and 20 seconds in, and then record the thought. Just take the note, record the thought, take the note, record the thought, and then, keep tidy records so that, I totally played that music and I was supposed to cut out and stop talking, and I just talked all the way through that music. Sorry, folks. The coffee is gradually kicking in, though, and maybe I'll be less spirally out of control as we move forward through this immersive day of me being a weirdo. I hope to ramp up. When I've been really active, I've done 2, sometimes 3 episodes in a day. The goal, theoretically, as you join me in this journey, is to kind of like how they, the latest dietary advice is to eat many small meals a day that are diverse, but relatively, basically high in protein. But you also want to there's a curve you want to follow. I'm going to try to do that, but I'm still sort of experimentally stumbling my way through figuring out how to get that. But we're going to lock it down during this global lockdown and make it work and make it cool and groovy. And hey, thanks for tuning in.
And that is what I've got to say about that. As always, thank you kindly for listening. This has been the Almost Daily Zencast with your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zappa. Until next time, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart.